The Dallas Cowboys finished the 2024 season with a 7-10 record and missed the playoffs for the first time since 2020. It was an unfortunate year for the Cowboys as franchise quarterback Dak Prescott got hurt in Week 9 and missed the rest of the season. They were just 3-5 in games Prescott started in 2024, and I don't think Dallas was going to make the playoffs even if Dak stayed healthy, especially in a loaded NFC because remember, the 7-seed Green Bay Packers were 11-6, and Dallas would have had to have finished the year on an 8-1 run just to have a chance to get into the postseason, which would have required a sweep of the eventual Super Bowl champion Eagles, as well as a sweep of the Washington Commanders too. Even before the Prescott injury, it was a disappointing year for the Cowboys as they were blown out by both the Saints and Lions at home, as they lost by 25 to New Orleans and by 38 points to the Lions. As we know, this team has not been to the NFC Championship game in 30 years, and I have a lot of concerns with the Cowboys' future at this point in time. How can they get better? How can they win when it matters? And what is their realistic plan for the future? Well, we're going to break everything down in today's video. The concerns, the ways to improve the roster, and what they can realistically do to put themselves in a better situation. And there is a lot to break down in today's video, and without further ado, let's begin. And we are starting today's video by talking about what the Cowboys' biggest problem is, and it's a lack of talent throughout the roster. Despite how loud Jerry Jones can be at times, and how loud some Cowboys fans can be at times, this may surprise you that they are a pretty well-run organization when it comes to handling football matters, at least pertaining to the NFL draft. Obviously, no team is perfect, but in a 3-year span, the Cowboys drafted great football players that fell into their laps in CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, and Tyler Smith, and CeeDee has received his contract extension, and Micah and Tyler Smith will at some point too, but the point in bringing these three players up is they played a significant part in the Cowboys winning 12 games in each year from 2021 through 2023. And this also may surprise you that they were the only team to do that during that span. Not even the Chiefs did that, who of course won 2 Super Bowls during this time period. Dak Prescott had 2 35-plus passing touchdown seasons during this time period, and even finished second in the MVP voting in 2023, and there are people out there who legitimately think Dak Prescott should have won the MVP in 2023. But this team completely fell off the wagon from 2023 to 2024, as they allowed the second most points in franchise history, as they allowed 27.5 points per game, and allowed 27 or more points in 9 games in 2024, and in those games, Dallas had a record of 0-9. For all of the things Dallas does right as a franchise that other franchises wish they could do, like hitting on consecutive first-round picks, as simple as that sounds, Dallas also does not do a lot of things right either, and I think a perfect example of this is if you look at their playmakers on offense at the moment outside of CeeDee Lamb. Jake Ferguson was a really good tight end during the 2023 season as he had over 750 yards and made the Pro Bowl, and credit where it's due. But he, like a lot of other Cowboys in 2024, did not have a good year and actually finished the season with 0 receiving touchdowns despite having 86 targets in the 14 games he played. And what's unfortunate for Dallas is he's one of their better guys in offense at the moment outside of Lamb. Jalen Tolbert was a 3rd-round pick back in 2022 and had the best year of his career in 2024 as he had 610 yards and 7 touchdowns, but this is a player who has 73 career receptions and 890 career receiving yards. I think there is a very real possibility he has a good year in 2025 and even surpasses his production from last year, but I think it's important to remember he's in a contract year, and if he does have 800 yards or even in a crazy scenario has 1,000 yards and 7 or 8 touchdowns, he's probably gone after the 2025 season, so he can go get more money elsewhere, and you can't blame him for wanting to do so. And in that scenario, Dallas would not give him the franchise tag to keep Jalen Tolbert on the roster, and I personally don't think that's going to happen, but wanted to point out the possibility. Kevontae Turpin is their 3rd receiver, and I'll be honest, I don't have a lot of confidence in Turpin becoming a great 3rd receiver in this offense. He had 420 yards receiving last year, as well as 2 receiving touchdowns, and simply put, the Cowboys can do a lot better than Kevontae Turpin as their 3rd guy. I thought the Jonathan Mingo trade was horrific, and after being traded midway through the 2024 season from Carolina, Mingo played in 8 games for the Cowboys and had 5 receptions on 16 targets for 46 yards for Dallas. All of the praising we did for Dallas in terms of being able to hit on first-round picks quickly tapers off after the first round, and that's one of their biggest problems as to why they are in the position they are currently in. Now, there's other rounds than just the first round of the NFL draft, and unfortunately Dallas hasn't done well over the past two first rounds as they selected Mazi Smith in the 2023 first round and Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma in the 2024 first round. I've went in depth before about my frustrations with Mazi Smith, and I do want to credit Mazi for picking it up towards the end of year 2, but the frustrations, to shortly sum it up, is the organization did not have a great plan for Mazi Smith when he was selected, and they basically selected a 335-pound defensive tackle and then said that they wanted him to lose weight. And obviously if you go from 335 to 310 as a defensive tackle, that is going to significantly change the playing style of the said defensive tackle. So to want that from your first round pick and to basically try and change everything around from what he was accustomed to the year before when he was dominating at the collegiate level was not a good plan for a guy that you spent a first round pick on. But rounds 2 through 4 over the past couple of years have not been particularly kind to Dallas. And we go back to 2022 when they selected Sam Williams in the second round, and unfortunately Sam tore his ACL prior to the 2024 season starting. He didn't have a bad first couple of years, and he was an okay number 2 rusher, and I was hoping he would take the next step in 2024, but unfortunately his season was over before it ever got started. That is the reality of the NFL. You want guys to step up, unfortunately injuries happen, and there's nothing you can do. We of course wish Sam the best now that he is in a contract year and hope that he can break out in a contract year and hopefully secure a financial future for him and his family with a successful 2025 season. We've talked about Jalen Tolbert, who had a breakout year in 2024, but I'm not entirely sold on Jalen Tolbert, and it's really going to take another year of that type of production and to really improve upon what he did last year in 2024 for me to really believe in Jalen Tolbert, and at that point, the Cowboys would also have to sign him to a long-term deal. Now, just because we've talked about some of the unsuccessful day 2 and day 3 selections of the Cowboys over the past couple of years, that doesn't mean I don't want to purposely leave out the good selections they've made, because the reality is, once you get out of the first round, and even the first round of the draft is a crapshoot in itself, you are obviously going to whiff on more picks than you're going to hit on. That is the statistical reality of the NFL draft. So going back to 2022, Jake Ferguson was a Pro Bowl tight end that they selected in the 4th round, and whether Jake Ferguson ever gets back to the player he was in 2023, which I think there is a good chance if Dak stays healthy and if Jake stays healthy, especially with the current lack of true wide receiver 2 in this offense, I think there's a very good chance that Jake Ferguson can have another Pro Bowl caliber season. That is a hit, and that is a good draft pick. And they also selected Deron Bland in the 5th round, and I know Deron Bland had a up and down 2024 season due in some part to injury, but again, he was a first-team All-Pro, and he had a 9-interception season in 2023 that they selected at pick 167 in the 2022 draft. No matter how you slice it, that is a home run of a pick that late in the draft. And to be honest, I would really argue that's a really good selection at almost any point in the draft to have a first-team All-Pro at any point in their career, whether it's first overall, whether it's 167th overall. Obviously, you'd want a little more from a first overall pick, but the point stands. They hit a home run with the Deron Bland pick back in 2022. But some of the other selections on day 2 and day 3 of the drafts over the past couple of years haven't been the best. I was not a fan of the Luke Schoonmaker selection when it was made, and I thought there were better tight ends on the board, like Tucker Kraft, for example, when they drafted Schoonmaker back in 2023 with the 58th pick, and in 2 years he has 35 receptions for 306 yards, and that is particularly worrisome because, again, Dallas's offense is not very good outside of CeeDee Lamb. I mean, they don't have a lot of receivers to really contend for the targets outside of CeeDee Lamb and, of course, Jake Ferguson, but if Luke Schoonmaker was that good, he would be receiving targets within that offense. DeMarvion Overshown, to me, is a really good player when healthy, but unfortunately, Overshown hasn't been able to stay healthy, and I wish him the best because he is a really, really fun player to watch, and I really enjoyed watching him play while he was at Texas and throughout the 2024 season when he played for the Cowboys, but unfortunately, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. For every day 2 and day 3 pick that the Cowboys have hit on over the past couple of years, like we mentioned with Jake Ferguson and Deron Bland, and you can even go back to last year with a player that I think is on his way to being a day 2 hit in Cooper Beebe, or even back to 2020 with Trayvon Diggs and Tyler Biadasz, or in 2021 with Osa Odighizuwa, who recently signed a contract extension. Are they going to have enough to win a Super Bowl? And the most difficult part about building an NFL team in today's era and getting over that hump and getting to the NFC Championship game for the first time in 30 years, or even the Super Bowl, is being able to blend the veterans making a lot of money, most notably a quarterback with an average annual value of $60 million per year, and capitalizing while you have great young players on cheap contracts. like the Eagles just did with Jalen Carter being on a really cheap deal this past year, and several other players for that matter, whether it was Cooper DeJean, whether it was Quinyon Mitchell, you get the point. Can Dallas blend all of that together in one offseason, especially when they already lost guys in free agency this year like DeMarcus Lawrence, Jordan Lewis, Rico Dowdle, and Brandon Cooks? And that is the ultimate challenge in building a winning team in today's NFL. Now, one of the other reasons why the Cowboys' future scares me is because two of the other three teams in their division are pretty good, and one, of course, is the defending Super Bowl champions. Now, Dallas did get outscored by the Eagles by a combined 75-13 when they played in 2024, and obviously that's not good, but I will say Dak Prescott did not play in either game. However, if he did play, I don't think the result changes, and I still think the 2024 Cowboys get beat pretty handedly by the 2024 Eagles, just not by 28 points in one game, and by 34 points in another. The Eagles are a really good team, and I know they lost several players this offseason, whether it be due to retirement in Brandon Graham's case or due to free agency in several other players' case, but their general manager Howie Roseman is one of the best in the business for a reason. He does a tremendous job building their roster and giving them a chance to seriously compete year in and year out. And sure, I don't expect the Eagles to go 14-3 again and have multiple double-digit playoff wins, as expecting any team to do that in back-to-back years is incredibly lofty for anybody, even the Eagles, but I would be pretty surprised if they don't win double-digit games due to how loaded their roster is. And I don't look at the Cowboys roster at this specific point in time and think to myself that, hey, week 18 at the Link, season on the line, NFC East on the line, I'm picking the Cowboys over the Birds to win the division. I think there is a big step between these teams, and I don't personally think that should be a hot take. Now, Washington is in an interesting situation because they are coming off of an NFC Championship game appearance, which was their first time being in the NFC Championship game since all the way back in the early 90s. I don't mean for this to come across as disrespectful, but I am expecting a slight step back from Washington in 2025, and I don't just mean that, hey, I don't think they're going to go back to the NFC Championship game again. That would be incredibly easy to say, and one of the safest predictions you can make because of how hard it is to get there to begin with. And by the way, credit to Washington for playing the best team game of the year in the divisional round against the Lions last year. Truly. They forced 5 turnovers and ran for over 180 yards as a team, and had multiple big plays when it mattered. But I think there is a difference between where the Commanders and Eagles are, and I think we saw that the following week. I know Washington committed several turnovers against Philly in the NFC Championship game, but to me, the defining part of that game in terms of how it was played was Washington starting the game off with an 18-play drive and coming out with a field goal. Awesome. We scored points with a rookie quarterback in the NFC Championship game against a great team, and we kept them off the field for 7 minutes. Great. And Philly basically laughed at them and responded with a 1-play, 60-yard touchdown, and that was that. All of this to say that I don't think there is a substantial gap between Dallas and Washington, and that Dallas is automatically going to go 2-4 in the division in 2025 at best, and basically if you think otherwise, you're wrong. That's not the case. I could absolutely see Dallas winning 4 games in the division in 2025, and take your choosing of how they're split. I did not bring up the Giants much because I think they're in a pretty bad situation themselves, and they may give Dallas a game when they play, and to be honest, I don't think the Giants are as bad as the media makes them out to be. I just don't think they're a good team either. But for the sake of the Cowboys in 2025, what really concerns me is the idea of this team going on the road to win not just one, but multiple playoff games when it matters, with a team that I don't think is built to do that, at least not this year. So what should the Cowboys draft class actually look like? Well, let's go ahead and discuss. They have 3 picks in the top 100 as they have picks 12, 44, and 76, and unfortunately for the Cowboys, they don't pick again all the way until 149. What particularly stinks is pick 114 would be theirs if they didn't trade for Jonathan Mingo, which again was a terrible trade to begin with. So looking at pick 12, Ashton Jeanty would of course be the ideal scenario. He's a top 3 or 4 player in this class, but I don't think there's any way that he falls all the way to pick 12. I think there's a really good chance that the Raiders take him at pick 6, and 2 weeks out from the draft, that is where I think Ashton Jeanty is going. But hypothetically, if the Raiders do not take Ashton Jeanty, the Cowboys could take him at pick 10, and there's also rumblings that Mike Vrabel could get his running back of the future at pick 4, although I think that's the less likely out of the 3 between the Raiders, Bears, and Patriots. I think the Patriots are more inclined to go offensive line or receiver than running back at pick 4, but I did at least want to point that out. So for the Cowboys at pick 12, I think their most two realistic options that also help this team in a significant way would be Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona or Will Campbell, the offensive tackle from LSU, who is projected to play guard at the NFL level. He could play right guard for Dallas, and he would be an instant upgrade along their offensive line. If neither Campbell nor McMillan are available at pick 12, then I am a big Luther Burden fan. There's been a lot of varying opinions in this draft class, and there's guys that have Matthew Golden at wide receiver 2, and there's guys that have Luther Burden at wide receiver 2. I am a big Luther Burden fan and think that he can get back to the player that he was in 2023, and think that he would be a good complement to CeeDee Lamb. There's also a chance that if somebody like Tyler Warren is available at pick 12, maybe they try and trade back a couple of spots to acquire extra draft capital from a team like Indy, who currently has pick 14. Ideally, the Cowboys would walk out with either McMillan or, like we said, Will Campbell in the first round, but again, a backup option is Luther Burden. They then select at pick 44, and if they do not go Will Campbell at pick 12, then somebody like Donovan Jackson, a talented guard from Ohio State, who is a multiple-time all-conference player, would be a good option for Dallas at pick 44. With pick 76, you could go Damian Martinez or RJ Harvey, which are two talented running backs, or you could even draft a talented running back on day 3, because this class is absolutely loaded at the running back position. To be completely honest, I wouldn't be opposed to the Cowboys trading back from pick 76, maybe to the 90 to 95 area, to acquire more day 3 capital so they can maneuver up and down the board rather than having a big gap from pick 76 to 149. My ideal realistic draft scenario for the Cowboys is drafting Tetairoa McMillan at pick 12, who I think has been completely overthought all throughout the draft process, and who I believe is suffering from a classic case of prospect fatigue. I would love for them to get Donovan Jackson in the second round, the guard from Ohio State, and potentially trade back a couple of selections from pick 76, maybe to the late 80s or early 90s area, while being able to acquire a couple of extra picks on day 3, and being able to maneuver up and down the board. They have 5 selections after pick 200, and at those points, those are dart throws, so if they can package a couple of those picks along with 76 to acquire somewhere in that 88 to 95 area, along with a pick maybe in the 110 to 115 range, I think that's a realistic scenario for the Cowboys to being able to trade back while still having premium picks on day 3 of the draft. At that point, I would like a running back like we said in RJ Harvey or Damian Martinez, or even DJ Giddens from Kansas State, who I also believe is an underrated prospect in this class, and completely rebuilding or retooling the Cowboys offense from where it was in 2024. But the biggest question that remains for the Cowboys entering 2025 and 2026 for that matter too, is it going to be enough? Only time will tell, and that's my biggest concern with the Cowboys moving forward, is they have to have a near perfect draft in 2025 to be able to maximize the talent that they currently have to get back to the upper echelon of NFC teams and to win 11 or 12 or even 13 games, and then at that point win not just one but multiple playoff games. And we unfortunately know that Dak Prescott has struggled throughout his career in the postseason, which could merit an entire video on its own. And my biggest concern with Dallas and their future is I really think they're a good team when they're healthy, but I don't think they're a great team, and they're in a really tough position, especially with a rookie head coach, and only time will tell how all of this works out. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 47% of people watching are subscribed. It helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.